Okay guys, I'm going to give a very quick mix walkthrough for my song Make It Back Somehow featuring the talented Fraser Watt on vocals. So let's dive in. So I'm going to do a bit about just the general instrumentation. I'm going to give a bit about my favourite plugins and then just some general kind of sound design choices as well as I go through. So it's important to, before I start, that this is not the mastered version. Obviously the mastering process is separate to the mixing, so usually you'll export the mix and then master it separately, so it might sound slightly different just on the limiting to the mastered version, but by and large this is the final mix choices that I made throughout the production. So first things first, let's start at the very start and work our way through the song, and I'll show you some of my instrumentation. So at the very start of the song, I have this kind of plucked theme which lasts throughout the majority of the song, which is actually what I built the song on. So I'll play you a bit of that now. So that just creates this kind of eeriness, this atmosphere, and it's quite dark, and the way I built that up was from 3 different channels here. So I've got plucked delay, which sounds like this. So you can hear the delays in there. I've got a plucked horn. And I've got a plucked reverby type sound, which is where the majority of the atmosphere will come from. So I actually like all 3 sounds on their own, but when you combine them all, it just really creates this kind of unique sound design choice that I really like. After these plucks now, I'll take you through, you'll hear the bass come in and some nice pads just to create even more atmosphere, and the bass gives that warm low end that comes in. So you can see again I've brought in another pluck, again just to further emphasise the melody and to bring in another area of interest in the melody itself. The pads are very kind of atmospheric, very laid back. Very subtle indeed. The bass is hugely strong, and that's because this is a very EDM influenced song. I was listening to a lot of EDM tracks at the time and they're massive on their bass, so I wanted to see if I could push my bass to the limit on this track, and I definitely have. It's maybe too much at some areas, but it's just so that when you get it across all different platforms that you're listening, whether that be a mobile phone, earbuds, etc. Some of these don't have great bass drivers, so if you push it that wee bit more on the actual mix, it transpires across those much better. So I'll play it with Fraser's vocals now.
Every time you make me laugh, every time you say you're sorry, it only makes me feel the same.
Play close attention to the effects that I've put in here. That again just adds that, fills that space, adds elements of ear candy. Listen to this one here as I play it through.
All this time I knew that I never was the one you wanted.
Subtle, but makes a big difference when it's there. So let's go into the chorus now, and you'll hear some plucks come in which add a bit more rhythm, start to pick up the song, and we've also got electric piano here, so I will play it and then strip it back for you.
You keep trying to tell me it's over. You keep trying to push me back into the crowd.
So I really wanted to bring in piano here just to add a bit more of the kind of body to the track, but it also features some very subtle melodies in it as well. So you can see there that I have deliberately merged again 2 signals, one electronic piano sounding and one acoustic piano sounding, just to create again a unique tone. The plucks that come in really start to pick up the kind of rhythm of the song. And they're quite wide in the mix, so they really kind of punch through from left and right at you. And most importantly, this is when the rhythm really starts to build, and the majority of the rhythm in this song comes from the kick, because it's an EDM track or EDM inspired track. The kick is absolutely fundamental, and I spent a good bit of time trying to get the right kick tone and sound by listening to reference EDM tracks. So a lot of high frequencies coming through that kick, so it can really cut through the mix. And that's where you're hearing that kind of snap. So it really is present, and really a present rhythm in the song.
You keep trying to tell me it's over.
So one of the things I'll dive into now in terms of my choices, if you look at the kick here, I've got loads of stuff on it. I've got some initial EQ where I roll off the absolute lows. But if you look here, I've got 2 little ducks, which is sidechained to audio 5, which is your bass. And what I'll do here is I've chosen these frequencies in the bass guitar or bass element to really, I want them to come through. So the kick and the bass are always competing around the same frequency zone, so what I'll do is I'll just duck them slightly. So you'll see that happen hopefully now.
You keep trying to tell me it's over. You keep trying.
So you can see as the bass is playing, it's reacting to that and ducking out those frequencies that the kick is still trying to push through. So it just creates more space for the bass to come through. And likewise, I do the exact same on the bass here, where these 2 frequencies I try and take away, which is where I want the kick to come through. So you can see that because they're competing, you've got to do some EQ shaping there to let them come through. So hopefully that makes sense. Pro Q3 is a fantastic plugin for that reason, but it's a bit expensive. I think you've got to invest in that one. It's not free. Finally, in the chorus and the build up to the drop, which is the centerpiece of this song, you'll find this long noise sweep, which is just a kind of white noise sample to bring the motion up before you drop it into the big sound in the drop.
You keep trying to push me back into the crowd, and every second we waste makes it colder. How many times can we make it back somehow?
Okay, so now we're into probably the main element that I wanted to focus on in the song, because it's EDM inspired, which is the drop. And I didn't want to do the drops samey the full way through. So you can see that drop A, I've got what should be called drop B here. Oh, it is called drop B, it's just for some reason showing drop A. And then I've got drop C. I'll take you through firstly the percussion, because I really wanted to create rhythm in the drop, but not have it the standard snare, kick, hats. I wanted some cool sound design elements. So this came in the form of samples, which I've named pop, clink, thump, metal and wood. Hopefully you can get an idea of what I've tried to do there. So it's subtle, but they really do poke through, and they add a much different vibe to the drop itself than just a kick and a snare. Focus of the drop as well is vocal chops, so let's listen to those. So if you listen carefully to the vocal chops, they're all built from obviously chopping up a vocal, as the name would suggest. And the key thing for me that I've used on the vocal chops chain here is I've got lots of saturation happening, EQ, compression. LA2A is a standard for me on mostly vocals, adds a really nice warm compression. I've got H delays there and ping pong, so you've got that kind of bouncing delay effect on either side. I've got a nice long tail on the reverb, so you can really feel the depth of the vocal chops. And the main one to note is I use this scan vibrato plugin, which just creates movement in the vocal chops. So instead of them just being completely static, they're kind of moving around the centre of the stereo image. So what I'm going to do now is turn that on and off, and hopefully you can hear that effect. So the final thing worth mentioning in the drop is obviously the drop synths, which I've got a specific bus here for. In terms of the synth itself, it's called Rising Synth here, and I'll let you hear it on its own. So you can see it's got this nice whooshing tone to it, and it's a real presence in the drop, and probably it's the focus for me in the drop to add that real kind of synthetic body of the sound. So you can see when I take it out, the drop just sounds completely different, so it's an absolute fundamental primary instrument in that drop section. And now I'll take you into the next section.
Another picture off the wall, but you didn't think I'd notice. Is this all part of the game?
So you can see here I'm going back to the original theme of the intro into verse 1, and I'm sticking with the same themes, but I'm building on it slightly. So I've now got the pads coming in here straight away, I've got the electric piano in where it wasn't before, and I've got the bass continuing from the off, snaps, kicks. So I didn't have the kick in verse A, so again I'm showing that momentum's came down, but I'm not completely taking it away, so that there is still a bit of a distinction and a bit of a difference since the initial verse.
I know you fantasize about things you always wanted. We can't hide the memories we made. You keep trying to tell me it's over.
So how have I added a difference here? Hats. And if you listen carefully, the hats are bouncing off from left and right, hence the two channels here, in which I've got them separately panned, hard left and hard right.
You keep trying to push me back into the crowd, and every second we waste makes it colder. How many times can we make it back somehow?
So one thing to note in particular is I deliberately add the lead vocals in a verse and chorus track separately, because I treat them separately in terms of interest. So I want to build a difference between the verse and the chorus. Usually the chorus you want it to become wider, you want it to become bigger, etc. So I've kind of emphasised that in my tracks here, where in the verse I've got still a lot of plugins I'm using. I'm de-essing with the Eiosis, or however you pronounce it. I've got some EQ there. I'm adding some fundamental extra grit with the Vitamin plugin, which is great for that. And again, I've got my LA2A, which is standard on my vocals, and a Renaissance compressor. So what I'll do on vocals a lot is I'll add two compressors in series with, it just means that they work that little bit less, but they still control the dynamics really well, but they don't swamp the vocals, which is what happens sometimes when you've got a dynamic performance. The compressor will need to act quite hard, and that will really kind of shrink the dynamics of that vocal performance. So what I find is if you use two compressors in series, they both work that little bit less hard. It's like two friends helping each other. So you maintain the dynamics as best you can, but prevent the spikes coming through that really kind of punch and create that kind of uneasy feeling for the listener.
You keep trying to tell me it's over. You keep trying to push me.
One thing that you can see is on all my tracks I've got these bus groups. So I've got drop synths, I've got leads, I've got mids, bass, drums. These are all where I send all my drum tracks to. So all these are routed to bus 1, which then I go through the final effects, and that allows me to control all my tracks in the drums group at once. And what I usually do, which is quite common for me, is I'll put it through the virtual mix rack by Slate's Digital. Absolutely fantastic overall plugin, which has so many different elements to it. So here I'm adding a bit of analog warmth to it by simulating it going through a Brien console, and then putting it through again a typical analog EQ, just to create that different tonality coming through there. A bit of saturation I'm adding, and again I'm doing 2 compressors in series, one to add a bit of parallel compression and one to just prevent a bit of clipping there. So this is an absolutely brilliant plugin that I'll do for all my bus groups. And what it means is, particularly with the EQ, when I'm notching off certain elements in the drums, I can replicate that in the bass and make sure that the bass is going the opposite way. So the frequencies are coming through where you want them on certain drum buses across the certain track groups, and on the other ones, you know, there's a bit of give and take there. So it really allows you to shape your overall track groups, which is fantastic. So next probably is, again, we're building up to the next drop, and again, to make it different, I've added different elements. So I've added an extra drop synth and an extra layer of the vocal chops here, which are pitch shifted up an octave, just to create that difference. So have a listen to that going in now.
When will tomorrow be today?
So you can see when I take out and put back in the polysynth drop, it really makes a difference, and it really kind of adds so much thickness to that drop sound. What I'll do is I'll play the vocal chops here on their own, just so you can see when I'm bringing in the extra octave above. Very subtle, but does make a difference to allow the vocal chops to cut through the mix. And you can see here also what I've done is I've added it on certain vocal chops on this drop, and I've added it in all of them in this drop. So you can see how I've built from just the normal vocal chops to half with octaves and then full with octaves. Again, the song is taking a natural progression. So now it's basically bridge time, where again we've got to take the full momentum back and create a bit of interest, and this is where I wanted lyrically from the kind of angst of Make It Back Somehow by Fraser, just when he's kind of going up and, you know,
Cans keep turning every time that I feel you drift away. When will the embers stop burning?
When will tomorrow be today? Like, when will this actually resolve itself? So I wanted, that's obviously quite, the chorus A and chorus B here vocally are him kind of expressing a lot of angst and a lot of emotion. And what I wanted to do in the bridge is bring it all back again before I build it up and even bigger release that emotion again. So have a listen to this. So here, the thing of note is this radio effect here, which is just, I think, a stock Logic loop sample even. And what I've done here is I've added, again, a lot of delay, which you can hear ping-ponging across. So I'll play that for you on its own. So you can hear that kind of stereo effect that it's doing. Again, it's probably meaningless, you can't really hear what they're saying, but it does add quite a lot of interest again to the bridge. So I'm bringing in the snaps here to start that build up, starting it very, very simply with snaps and building it up within the build section to include snares, claps at the end, the kick, etc. I'll just move out so you can see some of the waveforms.
Keep trying to say that it's over. You keep trying to push me back into the ground. Every second we waste makes it colder. How many times can we make it back somehow?
So what have I done here to build further momentum? So obviously you want a big build here in the section called build, funnily enough. So I'm adding the instruments in that will drive that, so your kick, the snaps have been there, but you're wanting at the end this kind of snare roll to really kick up. What I've done here in the effects is I build it up with a noise sweep, and then I use the body of a noise sweep, and you can see I've kind of created this fade in and fade out, which is this, you've built it up, taken it away, and then you're suddenly bringing it up again before you smash. So have a listen to this on its own. And I've got an impact thing here, which again is probably getting lost in the mix, but it's there, just adding that extra impact body. I don't want it to completely swamp the mix out. So one thing to particularly show you is the effect that I use on the vocals on the Make It Back Somehow, where this vocoder effect comes in, like so.
Make it back somehow.
And how I do that is I use the manipulator plugin, where I've kind of got it with a 30% dry wet signal, and I've got different elements here. So I've got that kind of pitch shift there, and I automate those features throughout as well, so you can hear the difference in how it changes across the song as well. So that's where I get that main effect from. And then what I've done is I've got loads of different kind of ad-lib vocals here by Fraser, which is fantastic.
Can we make it back somehow?
And I've added quite a lot of distortion here through the temper plugin, which is fantastic for that. Adds a lot of grit. Again, I want it to sound very different from the lead vocal because it is an ad-lib. It's in the background of when the drop is kicking off. So that really allows that again to be a difference there. So I'll play you now the final drop.
We get back somehow. Can we make it back somehow? Make it back somehow. Can we make it? Can we make it back somehow?
So that was my mix walkthrough for my song Make It Back Somehow. I'd love you to check out the track in its entirety on Spotify, etc., or any platform that you choose. And yeah, if you have any other questions about any specific elements of the mix that I've not taken you through that you want to find out about, reach out to me and I'll do my best to answer you as soon as I can. And please follow me on all the socials, etc., because I've got some new music coming out very soon. And some of that is very different to this as well, so hopefully you'll enjoy the variation of the music that I produce.
You keep trying to say